Hi, this is Adam Elio Berkowitz. I'm here with a very dear friend, Jim Barfield, who's a really amazing guy, okay, in very many ways. Jim is running what's called the Copper Scroll Project. And I've seen it where people have no idea what the Copper Scroll is. And we usually just direct them, look at the Wikipedia page. And in 30 seconds, they see something that they would not believe were it not right there on Wikipedia, very unambiguous. So I'd like to do that to open up. And so people, if they don't know what the Copper Scroll is, I'm reading directly from Wikipedia. The Copper Scroll is one of the Dead Sea Scrolls found in Cave 3 near Khirbat Qumran, but differs significantly from the others. The other scrolls are written on parchment or papyrus. The Copper Scroll is written on metal copper mixed with about 1% tin. And it's two separated sections of what was originally a single scroll about 8 feet in length. Unlike the others, and this is the important part, it's not a literary work, but a list of 64 places where various items of gold and silver were buried or hidden. Okay. So what we're looking at is, and the Copper Scroll was found. Jim, what year was the Copper Scroll found?
1952.
1952. So we're looking at 70 years, over 70 years, pardon me, and it's in the Jordanian Museum in Amman, Jordan. And archaeologists have been looking at it for 70 years. It's been translated. It is a shopping list, or more accurately, a treasure map, describing where all the gold and silver was hidden. And it has never been found. Okay, and that's the beginning. Jim, how much gold and silver are we talking about?
Oh my goodness. It's tons and tons and tons of gold and silver. But there's also vessels made of gold and silver that are, according to Imek Hamelek, a document that was penned in let's see, 1600s, I believe. And it gives all kinds, millions of bowls, cups, items that you would use for the services in the temple. So
Right.
it's an extraordinary amount of silver and gems.
So I want to emphasize we have a treasure map to find all this gold and silver. We're talking billions and billions of dollars worth of gold and silver, temple utensils, artifacts that have not been found. This is not myth. This is not fairy tales. This is real stuff. And archaeologists have yet to find it. So Jim uh, I'm going to tell this very quickly and succinctly because I've been writing about this for years, and if people don't believe it, they're never going to believe it. Jim was a U.S. Army helicopter pilot, and he was an arson investigator for the Oklahoma Fire Department. And Jim retired, and Jim is not the kind of guy to let grass grow under his feet. His idea of being retired is getting busy. So he decided that in his retirement, he would decipher the Copper Scroll project that no archaeologist had succeeded in deciphering. And he didn't have to come to Israel to do that. Everything is available, written in books, online. Um, and Jim believes that he deciphered it. Um, and um, he, okay, so Jim, so you take it from there. I think that's about as much of an introduction. And the reason I apologize for giving away the story beforehand, but the problem is that most people don't believe it when they first hear it. that there's gold and silver buried, just waiting to be picked up. And it's been lying there for 70 years.
Oh yeah, much, much, much longer than that. But
Well, yeah.
yeah, from the time of the discovery, it was 70 years or so, since 1952. And the strange thing about it is that how the archaeologists, the paleontologists, whatever you want to put in the mix, why they didn't figure it out, because it is, there's a portion of it that has to be deciphered, but it's a small portion of it. The rest of it is just read the document and follow directions, and you find it. I mean, it's really that simple. It wasn't.
There's an Israeli expression which we learn in the army, which is chokhmolog. A chokhmolog is a person who's so smart that he's stupid. And sometimes I don't want to say that the archaeologists were stupid, but apparently they were missing something that you managed to see pretty quickly, if I'm not mistaken.
It was very quickly, surprisingly quick. It surprised me, and it made me doubt myself. And I went back over it several times and I even whenever I got to the point that I'd figured out, I think there's about 20 of them, 20 different locations. I thought, okay, this is going way too easy for a guy that cannot speak Hebrew, cannot read Hebrew, and this is going way too easy, and I need to go to Israel and check it out. So
Well,
I did.
you're used to reading maps on the fly
Yep,
as a
literally.
helicopter pilot, reading them upside down, backwards, inside out, getting weird directions and finding the place anyway, while your fuel gauge is dipping. Um,
Yes.
so when you figured it out, um, what did you do?
Uh, when I figured it out, each one you have to understand. I broke it into sections. Each sentence was I broke each sentence down because there's a structure. It says, in a short answer, you look at what it says. It says go to such and such place. It's shaped like a thorn. That's literally what one of them says, and it's then it gives how many talents are there, and then it says to go this deep. Usually, it was about 7 cubits, and then you just dig up what's there, and it tells you
How
what to
deep is
look for.
7 cubits? Just how deep is 7 cubits?
It's about for it's about three, almost 4 meters or 4 yards. It's pretty deep. It's about 12 feet in the
Yeah,
American language.
it's not gonna you're not gonna stumble over it. It's
No, you're not going to trip over this stuff. There's some that aren't that deep. Some that are probably no more than 2 cubits or 3 cubits. I think the most shallow one is about 3 cubits, and but it gives you so many details. It makes it kind of hard for you not to figure out where it's at. And that's the problem with with all due respect to them, these archaeologists, they were trying to make it way more complicated than what it actually was. It's just follow the directions, and there you go. There they are. And what the first part of it starts off like this: under the ruins in the Valley of Achor is there are 17 talents of silver service vessels, and he tells you how to find them at the 40 cubit pool. I went there and I did the measurements on this place, and it was exactly the pool that I was looking at. It's the first one on the list. It was exactly 40 cubits long, and I thought, well, that's purely a coincidence, or maybe that's a standard measurement for this type of pool, that sort of thing. So I went to the next one, and it was very different. It said in the great ruined courtyard of the peristyle, look by the where the water inlet is, and you'll find 900 talents of gold, polished gold. In other words, pure, really purified gold. And I found that one very easily. So there's two. Third one was a cave that had been buried. And that's when I really got to thinking, okay, I'm on to something
when
now.
you say you found it, you meant you believe that you knew where it was on the map. You haven't been.
Well, yes, yes.
I want to emphasize. I don't want to go into it. It's all written down in the book, The Copper Scroll Project, written by Shelley Neese. Um, Jim has been battling against the powers that be in the Israeli government and the Israel archaeology establishment. They don't want to let him go in and look around, even though they don't even themselves want to go in, along with Jim. They aren't doing any digging in Qumran really, and that's really shocking. And that's a whole huge story unto itself.
Mhm.
Um, who buried the gold and silver, and who wrote the map?
This is where I really clash with the archaeologists and the historians. And but I don't. I no disrespect that I don't care. I don't care whether I clash with because they certainly haven't found it. Why don't I give it a try? So here's what it says: is this was all buried at the time of Jeremiah, which is a really very very special time because Haggai, Zechariah, Ezekiel. Let's go down the list. There's just all kinds of prophets at that time that were contemporary with Jeremiah. And so it was at the time that Jeremiah was being held captive. It's the exact same time. As a matter of fact, Emek HaMelech says that, Valley of the King, says that Nebuchadnezzar came into the Jerusalem area, crossed across the Jordan River, came into that area and attacked that compound, that small fortress-looking compound, and almost defeated the priests that were there. There's like 125 priests. 100 of them got killed. No, 125 got killed, and then they went into they backed off. The Babylonians backed off and left them alone, which was fantastic because they didn't know, the Babylonians had no idea they were fighting in, and they were taking control of, best they could, control of the compound. The compound was literally a fortress, a treasury. And the name of that treasury, it gives you the name of the treasury in the Copper Scroll. It's called the House of Hakaz. They almost won. The Babylonians almost won. Had they won, it would have been an absolute devastation for a lot of things because these items were put away for the future, for the coming temple. They what is called today considered the third temple.
One of the things that you've done for me, um, I have a very high impact method of learning. I say I don't believe you, and then I expect people to convince me, and you convinced me which is not an easy thing to do. Um, Qumran, it's like you think that like you have a regular country, and then you have Jerusalem, and then you have the temple. But there were actually a lot of different things going on. It wasn't just priests, Levites, and Israel. And it wasn't just mainstream Judaism and just in Jerusalem. Qumran, there were priests, there were scribes. It was also a sect that in many ways was outside of mainstream Judaism. It was a very interesting place, and they were choosing Qumran. A lot of very holy people like Jeremiah hung out there,
Mhm.
and scribes who were a scribe was a very important person in the religious hierarchy. And and it required a lot of work, a lot of infrastructure as well. And one of the things, if you go to Qumran, there's a lot of pools, mikvahs, ritual baths. So
Mhm.
you convinced me that there was a lot going on there that was connected to the temple, parallel to the temple, but
Mhm.
outside of Jerusalem. And if you look on the map, Qumran is almost right next to Jerusalem, just deep in the earth, and Jerusalem is on top of a mountain. So they're actually not right next to each other. But on the map, they look like right next to each other. So you convinced me that there was something unusual going on there that was in conjunction with the temple, which is why they would have hidden not only the gold and silver there, but there's just so much here. Uh, Vendell Jones, who was one of your teachers, one of your mentors to a degree, he also did digs in Qumran, and he found the persimmon oil, which was used for anointing priests, and he also found quite a bit of ketoret, of incense. So there were things there that were connected to the temple. There also the ashes of the red heifer were all over the country. So if people became impure, they could be purified where they were. So I have a feeling that was also there's also probably a cache of red heifer ashes at the at Qumran. Um,
Oh, so do I. Absolutely.
Yeah, there was a lot going on there. So the one part of the story that I do want to go into depth is Mac, okay, and
Mac?
and Moshe
Okay.
Feiglin. Um,
Sure.
you were doing research at home in Oklahoma, and you came to conclusions, and you came to Israel to check it out, but you couldn't dig.
Right.
So what did you decide to do?
Well, once I got over there and I really realized how much red tape there was going to be, and this is from a very naive point of view, I thought I'd go show them, they would see my research, and they would take it from there and dig. Well, it didn't happen that way. There was this
Spoken like a
awful
guy who isn't Israeli. Okay.
Israel. Yeah, and I have learned the Israeli ways far better than what I did in the early days. I realized that it wasn't going to be an easy road to hoe. It was going to be very difficult. And it was. I mean, it's been 18 years now. Matter of fact, today, 18 years ago today, I made the discovery. It was a cold, early December morning when I figured out the first five. Well, at that point, I realized I'm going to have to go at this from a different perspective, meaning I've got to convince people, excuse me, I've got to convince people that my research is correct. And really, if they just take time to look at it, I can't tell you how many scholars have looked at my research,
Right.
kind of, I don't mean this in a nasty way, but poo pooing me. Like they absolutely didn't believe what I was saying. Some very high ranking rabbis and some very high ranking dignitaries in the archaeological department, they looked at my research. They said, oh my gosh, because it's so simple, you can't help but look at it and see, okay, this guy's onto something. So what I did was I started looking for people to help support me on this. And there was one guy, Matt Kaiser, great, wonderful man. He is certainly considered in a saintly world with the rest of the people. He's just kind. You've met him. He's just kind, very loving, 6'4". He's a giant of a guy and just a gentleman. I mean, you wouldn't even know he was in the room if you didn't know he was in the room. He's just that kind of a person. He melds into the background, and nobody even notices him. That's how gentle he is. Well, Mac, when he first met me, it was on the phone. He called me and he said, "Is this Jim Barfield?" And I was at a conference. I said, "Yes, it is." He said, "Mr. Barfield," he said, I'd like to talk to you." And I said, "Okay, I'd be happy to." He said, "I want to give you some money." I said, "Well, okay," but I said, "Now, Mac, you got to understand, I don't want your money until you know exactly what we're doing and why we're doing this." I said, "If you like that, then we'll work together." Well, from that day to this day, we've been working together. Mac is a cattleman, and he's not filthy rich, but he did very well for himself, and he provided the funding. I did not, and I do not like asking for money. I feel like one of those TV evangelists
Well,
whenever I do that.
specifically, I have to tell you, your description of Mac, I think if anything, you understated it. I met Mac once, and I could almost see his huge wings. He's he's not
Yeah,
of this world. He is
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I love the guy. But he specifically provided you substantial sums for one
Mhm.
purpose. And
Yes.
that was,
It was because of, now this may sound crazy, but he's one of the few guys, if he tells me he had a dream, I stop and listen
mm,
because he doesn't take that stuff lightly. It's very serious to him. He had, and he kind of calls it a vision actually. He had seen the temple doors, and I'm cutting it down considerably. He had seen the temple doors, and he heard God tell him, "You are going to be involved with the temple, and you need to help support that operation." Well, Mac, he is very much a believer in God. He said, "Yes, sir." And then he began to look for who else he's supposed to work with. Went to a lady that was very helpful, very friendly. And I was doing another conference in Arizona. As I was doing the conference, she came up as I was speaking. She said, "Mr. Barfield, there's someone I want for you to meet." I said, "Okay." And she said, "His name's Matt Kaiser." And I said, "That would be fine." She said, "I think he would help you work with you on this Copper Scroll project to help you reach your goal." And I said, "Let's get in touch with him." We did. And he met me in, I think it was Amarillo, between Oklahoma and New Mexico. We go to Amarillo. We meet in an apple orchard of all places. We meet in this apple orchard, and he gets out of his old truck, pretty ragged old truck, and it kind of used to be a yellow color, but now it's pretty beat up. And he's got the door latched with the hasp, the kind of, it's got a loop, and the latch comes down over it, and he had I think a screwdriver in it to keep the door from coming open. That's just the way he was. He had the money, but he just doesn't look like it. He doesn't act like it. He doesn't put in any airs.
so
Mac,
Jim, what did you
so
need the money?
he did from that on.
What did you need the money for?
Oh, going to Israel. We had to come to
Well,
Israel to check things out more, and we had to get over here, and we had to make ourselves known.
and you also needed to literally check out where the things were. So you were hoping to get a metal detector,
Oh yeah,
very
yeah.
advanced metal detector. But there were several problems with that. One problem was it was expensive. And Mac
Yeah.
really he was sent by heaven to help you get that
Oh
metal
yeah.
detector. How
Oh
much
yeah.
did that metal detector cost?
About $15,000.
And
And so
it wasn't cheap.
wasn't something you take to the beach with a little, disc on it.
No,
Not at all.
to look for lost earrings. It was
Yeah.
and it could sense down to how deep?
Oh, they advertise at least 50 feet. And
50.
that's way more than I needed.
And it could, yeah, and it could also differentiate between ferrous metal and non-ferrous metal, meaning gold and silver are not ferrous. So it could say you got metal here and it's not tin cans.
Exactly.
Okay.
The only kind of can that would show up is a aluminum beer can. Uh,
Okay.
I can't
Um,
imagine the prophets
or
having a bunch of that
or a
around.
solid gold can.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
and but that wasn't the end of your problems. Having the metal detector wasn't enough because the Israeli government was not going to just let you prance in and
No.
start waving that thing around.
No, you can't. In Israel, you can't use a metal detector without strict permission. And normally, you have to be an archaeologist. You've got to have the right credentials. And then they'll let you use your metal detector, but you have to do it under the supervision of an archaeologist.
Yeah,
So,
when I went to build a house, anytime you do any construction in Israel, you need
mhm,
permission from the archaeology branch of the government because Israel, anywhere you dig, you know, you're hitting remains from, artifacts from, Second Temple. It's crazy. Um,
yeah.
so they want to know what you're digging up. So how did you get into Qumran to check this out?
Well, I was invited by the Zahut party to come to New York City. It was being led by Moshe Feiglin at the time, and he he had a buddy that called me and said, Jim, you need to come here. You need to talk to Moshe Feiglin. I said, great. Well, I thought he had already arranged it with Moshe Feiglin. But when I showed up, Moshe Feiglin didn't have any idea I was coming. So I'm sitting there feeling like a big dummy. I should have, called him directly and not just trusted this guy, but it worked. I'm sitting in this person's living room, nice big table, and I was projecting my work on the wall behind, in front of me, and Moshe Feiglin was sitting to the left of me, and I was showing him the paper, the work. He wasn't paying attention, and I thought, "Dadgummit, I flew all the way from
Your story
Oklahoma."
is so Israeli. I'm sorry. It's like in Israel, everything happens because of who you know, and
Exactly,
and it's kind of dysfunctional, but it kind of works.
it
So
worked.
so you did get Moshe Feiglin's attention.
I
Um,
did.
and what did you tell him and what did he say?
I said, when I slapped the table in front of him, I was kind of upset. And I said, "Hey, I came a long ways, and this is important." And he looked at me like, "Who the heck is this?" But he listened, and I told him, I said, "These are temple items that are buried at Qumran." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Let me show you." And I went through about five of them. And at that point, he looked at me and said, "Why are you not digging this stuff up?" And I told him, "Because your government won't let me." He said, "What?" He said, I can't believe this. He was pretty upset then. And I said, "No, they won't let me." He said, "When are you coming back to Israel?" I said, "In 1 month." He said, "Call me when you get here. I will come out there. I will operate the your metal detector." And he said, "There's nothing they can do to me."
Yeah, he's a
And
he's a he's a member of Knesset. Also,
yeah,
I've asked Moshe Feiglin about this whole story
uh-huh.
because I just, I mean, Moshe Feiglin is a maverick. He's out there,
He
he's a
is.
free
He
thinker,
is
a free doer. But even for him, this is pretty
on the edge.
independent. So, but he confirmed it. And Moshe Feiglin, I have to tell you, he's one of the guys in the government who really impresses me. He's very, very thoughtful. Every time I speak to him, I learn something.
Hmm.
He's a smart guy and he's a doer. He believes in doing. He's practical, and he's one of he's the only member of Knesset that I used to meet at the temple reenactments. It's become very much in vogue in these last Tisha B'av. There were like 30 members of Knesset on the Temple Mount. But Moshe Feiglin has been involved in the Temple Mount movement for years.
Hmm.
It comes from his heart. He doesn't look like a particularly religious man, but
Hmm.
he believes in the temple. He believes in Israel as the Jewish state,
He does very
um,
much.
and he's very strong in that. So the fact that you impressed him, I think is significant. It says a lot about your project. So,
Hmm.
so you came back to Israel, you connected with Moshe Feiglin, you said, "Hey, Moshe, let's go."
And he said, "Let's go." He met me at Qumran.
Cool.
He had a kind of he had a driver, and I think one of his sons were with him, and then several other guys showed up, kind of an entourage, and we headed out to the to the site where the ruins are at. And I looked at him. I said, "Hey, Moshe," I said, "You got a good attorney?" He said, "Of course I do." And I said, "Will he get you out of this mess if we get into trouble?" He said, "I think so, yes." I said, "What about me?" He said, "You're on your own." I said, "Okay." So we get out there and literally got out there and we picked the spot. Strangest thing happened. Strange, very strange. One of the guys that was, questioned us, and Moshe Fagin said, "Let me handle this." And he did in Hebrew. He was speaking to him in Hebrew. And the guy looked at him, and then he went to the back of one of the buildings. And this guy just starts doing a dance, just doing a jig, and I mean, just dancing up a storm. And I looked at my buddies, and they said, well, whatever he's doing, he's happy about it. I think he realized that Moshe Feiglin was doing something, and he must have been a fan of the temple and fan of Moshe Feiglin because he just immediately backed off, called the people downstairs, which was down the hill a little ways, said who we were, and those guys said, leave him alone. Because they knew me already down the hill. So they just said, and they apparently knew Moshe Feiglin, and they said, just leave him alone. And we did our thing.
I think you got it right, and I'll tell you why. Um, People make the mistake and think that Israel is a secular country, but you don't have to wear black and have a long beard
Right.
and a keep on your head to be religious. I remember when the red heifers came to Israel. It landed in the air freight section of Ben Gurion
Mhm.
Airport, which is a huge building. I'm talking huge. It looks like the final scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where they hide the. It's just like this huge, huge warehouse.
Yeah.
And we set up in a little corner, and they made sure that we weren't, obstructing anything. Um, but when the red heifers came out, all of the workers, everything stopped, and all of the workers came over to see it. And I went up to them. I said, "Do you know what this is?" And they just looked at me and said, "Oh yeah."
Oh gosh.
And so I think that anyone who is familiar with Qumran, Israeli workers and whatnot, they know what the place is. It's not just another archaeological site with a few piles of rocks. It had
Exactly.
it had huge significance in the day.
Hmm.
The Dead Sea Scrolls are incredibly significant, and this is a significant Dead Sea Scroll. And when even though most Israelis don't go up to the Temple Mount, um, I think most Israelis are aware of the Temple Mount and support. If you say to them, well, do you support the temple? They might say no. But if you say, well, we're making moves to do it, they'd be like, wow, great, let's do it.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
most Israelis would say that.
I do too.
And,
Eh,
and that's interesting. So I think so you went with Moshe with the metal detector, and you got some pings.
Some, yeah, some very strong pings. We tested 5 sites. One of them kind of went askew. It was my mistake with the detector, but the other ones, all of them showed non-ferrous metals, lots of non-ferrous metals, and they were easy to identify. That I did in a specific place, all of the places that we found were places that I had identified on my research on the map. And if you took the research and you put it here and put the scanning on top of it, it would have matched. All of them would have matched up with what I'd already identified. Because I had guys tell me that that the that the Copper Scroll was some kind of Kabbalistic document. You have to do this. You have to cross lines in the center where they cross. You need. Well, I don't know how they come up with that, but bless their hearts. Uh, I just did what it said. Just
Obviously,
that
guys who never had to fly a helicopter while reading a map.
I
Okay.
guess I don't know what the deal was, but
So,
in
so,
Oklahoma we just say bless their hearts and we go on about our business.
so how long ago was this that you found that you got the pink?
I think it was 2014. So it's been a
So
while.
it's been a while.
10, 11, almost 11 years ago.
Okay. Now comes to an interesting part. This is I love Jim. I love the project. I think it's absolutely bringing the third temple and Geula. Um, I could go on about why I think Jim, who is not a Jew and not an Israeli, um, this is all coming down through him. There's a lot to be said. But the fact is, I really want to focus on the news. You said you got the pings in 2014, you said. And
Mm.
one of the reasons why I think that the Israeli government archaeologists did not want you to discover the gold is the Dead Sea area um, was conquered in 1967.
Mm.
And if you go to Wikipedia, they will emphasize that most of the world does not, most countries do not recognize Israel's claim to that region. They call it, they call it hugely, incredibly inaccurately, they refer to it as the occupied territories, which it
Yes.
is not.
No, it's not.
And there was a case a couple years ago, I could put the link in, where um, I believe it was the Bible Museum in Washington, D.C. They had a problem with a lot of the artifacts, the provenance of the artifacts, so they had to return a lot of them. And
Mm.
one of them was an incense shovel that had been found in the area of Hebron, and it was,
Mhm.
2, 3,000 years old, and they, air quotes, returned it to the Palestinian Authority.
Mhm.
So, which is, and I remember once there was a museum in America that wanted to borrow the Dead Sea, some Dead Sea Scrolls for an exhibit. And when it
Mhm.
came time to sign, yes, we'll borrow it and we'll give it back to Israel, the Israel government at such and such time, they didn't sign. And the Israeli government was like, whoa, I don't think so. Um,
Good for them. Yeah.
right. Um, but the point being that if we had suddenly discovered billions of dollars worth of gold and silver in the Dead Sea area, or actually probably anywhere in Israel, but especially in the Dead Sea area, the whole world would have screamed, "Oh, the Jews, the Jews." And you have to give it back to the Palestinians who are the original owners of the land. And as insane as that sounds, as I said, it's happened already and happened before. Um, and Jim, I give you a blessing, which I don't always do. Um, I think a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that in the last year, things have changed.
They
Uh,
had.
there is less, the Palestinian Authority, there's a saying, the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Um, in the last year, I think they've made themselves less relevant
Hmm.
and less legitimate. The
Hmm.
Palestinian Authority is aligning with Hamas rather than saying, "Oh no, we don't deal with Hamas. We can be a legitimate government." But rather than say that, they're aligning even closer with Hamas
Hmm.
and making themselves illegitimate. And as a result, and also because of what happened on October 7th, I think that there's a stronger support among Israelis to say enough of this stupidity. We tried Land for Peace. We tried
Hmm.
Oslo. We set up the Palestinian Authority. This is what we get in return. I don't think so.
Hmm.
We need to be in charge of Judea and Samaria. There's absolutely no way that the Israelis are going to come down from the Golan. When I first moved to Israel in '91, there was a very strong movement to secede from the Golan, and in order to make peace with Syria, which had we done that, we would be in really bad shape.
Hmm.
Um, so that's not even talked about. There's even talk about moving back into Gush Katif, into
Hmm.
Gaza, and letting Jews settle there,
Hmm.
letting Jews declaring sovereignty over Judea, Samaria, which would include Qumran. So
Hmm.
the political situation, and part of the problem is that as long as it's um, in this weird twilight status, then the archaeology in that area is under Kogat, under the military
Hmm.
authority, um, which is horrible. It allows the Palestinians to steal, destroy archaeological sites.
Hmm.
So things have shifted away from that. And that
In
would,
a very big way. Yes, they have.
in a big way. So when
Hmm.
you called me to say, well, I'm coming to see Qumran, I was very excited because I'm like, Jim, perfect timing. You know,
Uh,
a lot of people would say in the middle of the war, and I'm like, not exactly the middle, and
Yeah.
things are changing. Things are different.
What
So,
was what was interesting is, that when I chose to go to come over here, uh, they were rockets were dropping a lot, and I thought, you know what, and I really believe this is, I thought all those children, ladies, and older guys are all right in the middle of this. Who am I not to go over there, and because I got to try, I have to keep trying no matter what. So we did. But you know what? As we boarded the airplane, the rockets began to stop. And this entire time that we came over there over the last 2 weeks, I just got back yes 2 days ago. And it was just as quiet, beautiful weather. It was perfect for what I had to do. Now the trip was awful. We had to go through Turkey, through from there to Jordan, from Amman across the Allenby. That was a disaster waiting to happen, and it was bad.
mm,
We got treated pretty bad, but we still maintained, and we got all the way through it, coming and going. But people realize, and there's some things I can't tell you, but the people realize that we were serious. We mean what we say. We're gonna do this, and we want to do it no matter what. And that for us, it looked like we were going into a pretty dangerous situation, but no, excuse me, but not really. It was pretty peaceful, and I thank God for that. But we were determined to get over there and get some paperwork done and get some studies done. So yes, the whole thing was a very successful trip. However, the traveling itself was just a disaster.
so I have two more questions for you.
Hmm.
Okay, first question, without giving away any secrets.
Hmm.
If Jim Barfield suddenly found Aladdin's lamp and you had wishes about what could be done in Qumran and what could be done with the Copper Scroll and your findings. And I'm not even saying whether or not it's right or wrong, because to be honest, I've been talking to you about this for for so over
How long?
7 years.
Oh,
I went down to Qumran with you. I'm not I People read what's available online, see the other videos. Jim is right. Jim is absolutely right. There's no doubt. The Copper Scroll is not some kind of Indiana Jones mythology. It's known, verified by archaeologists. So, Jim, if you could have your wishes for the Copper Scroll, what would they be? Let's say the next 3 years,
wait, and yeah, let's say a year from now, just for
a
grabs.
year, just for kicks.
Yeah, and what I'd like is for Israel, not Israel, but Judea, Samaria, especially the portion of it that contains Qumran and all of the artifacts, that it would be solidly under the Israeli Antiquities Authority. No one else, not the Palestinians, not the Egyptians, not Jordanians, under completely locked in. That way, there's no threat to those items, because those items are precious beyond measure. And I
Not
would
just
like
not just
that.
monetarily, not just
No,
monetarily.
no, no, no,
We're
not just
talking
monetary.
temple artifacts.
Yes. So now that's what I would like, is that would allow us to get in there and extract these items, do it very precisely, do it like what we did when we did investigations. You approach everything very methodically, you document very methodically, and get lots and lots of pictures, and make sure that everybody can, if 100 years from now, they can look at my research and my documentation and say, okay, we start here. If we're going to start opening this up to travelers, visitors come to this area, we want them to see exactly what Jim Barfield and the guys saw when they opened the cave for the first time, when they opened the ground in and around the Qumran ruins, they see it exactly as it sat. I want to leave it as a legacy for the people of Israel, because that's what this is all about. It's about the Israelis, their children, my children, that they grow up in a world that is led by a magnificent ruler, a Messiah, a person that loves his country more than we can possibly imagine. That's what I want. But what people don't understand, you said it, you kind of touched on it, is the treasures and the gold is not the treasure. That's not where the treasures are at. I'm telling you. Can you imagine finding documents from the time of Jeremiah explaining things that there's some confusion in the book of Jeremiah. It's not in chronological order by any stretch of the imagination, but to get an entire document of Jeremiah's research or his prophecies, his knowledge, and roll it out and be able to read it firsthand. That is where the value's at. And the closer you get to God, no matter whether it's in documentation, you're blessed. You're being blessed. And that's what I want to see. People think I'm a treasure hunter, and that's the last thing I am. I really don't give a darn about their treasures. They're neat, they're kosher. We got to have them for building, but that's not it. It's a legacy we leave for our children. It's the knowledge that we gain for our children. That's what this is all about, and that's what I want to see happen.
Jim, there's something that has made you one of my dearest friends. Um, and I think I figured it out tonight, which is I've been writing about, this, Geula, redemption, prophecy thing for almost 9 years. And I've met some really amazing people along the way. And I think one of the things that we all have in common is a lot of people see Messiah, the end of days, prophecy as, haha, my team won. And you really don't, and neither do I. It's just like we're sitting here, the Jews have been returned to Israel. We're in Israel. You're like this close to finding temple utensils and temple gold and revealing items from the time of Jeremiah. We're that close to really returning or moving this time forward into a biblical reality. And it kind of really removes a lot of the divisions. I don't see you
Uh-huh.
as not a Jew. I see you as a co-traveler on this path.
Uh-huh.
I'm a Jew, very, very, very strongly a Jew. It's my personal identity and
Uh-huh.
undeniable. And so that's my place in this journey. And along the way, I happen to meet Jim Barfield. You want to change the world for your grandchildren, and so do I.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Everyone does.
Honestly, not everyone. You know, I, you know, I'm not here to prove Jewish people are right. It's like God told us to bring good into the world, to bring the third temple into the world, to bring a prophetic reality into the world. And you're doing that.
I
So,
well, thank you, and I hope that that's my goal is to help people to understand and know that whenever God talks about love your brother as yourself, or love your neighbor as yourself, it doesn't mean just your blood brother. It means
right.
your neighbor, your next door neighbor, and on and on. It's about loving one another to the point you'll stand and defend each other to the death. You take care of that, and that's the only way we're going to get this. And I don't mean by war. I don't mean that at all. By we're going to get this world under control is a strong stance for what is right and what is good, and never give that up.
Right. And it's supposed to be a house of prayer for all nations. It's not
Yes.
going to be like, haha, this guy was right. or haha, our team won.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
it's like it's kind of like a World Series where every team comes, every team shows up. Um, and Jews are just we're the placeholders. We're the priests. We're the ones who we're the Walmart greeters. We stand at the door saying, "Oh, we've been waiting for you. We're so glad you finally made it." You know,
Yes.
that's how I see it. And it's not la di da plurality. It's it's a godly pure plurality as I see it, which is why I
Hmm.
think it's so significant that you found it. Um, and Christians have been playing, or non-Jews have been playing a very significant role, for
Yeah, they
example, in
have.
the red heifer and
Yeah.
in what you're doing. We're finding that even in the war effort, and in in they're our greatest allies, the
Hmm.
non-Jews. Not
Hmm.
all of them, but the ones who have that um, prophetic vision are certainly there with us. And I think your project is one manifestation of this. So,
Well, I do too. Thank you. And what I also feel is and you and I talked about this a few weeks ago, is we're at such an incredible, special time in history and I've noticed this whenever I make advances, there are a lot of let me just make it real simple. It's like the demonic world attacks and tries to suppress what I'm doing, what the other people are trying, what they're trying to do. And for my Jewish brothers, they attack them for no reason at all. And I know there's people dying in Gaza and all around us where those battles are taking place. But we take time. I take time to pray for even for our enemies and tell God, make it as few as possible to make our world will change. But you don't want to see people getting hurt. You don't want to see children and many people getting killed. But they also have to realize they must not kill my Jewish brothers because I would stand with them as well.
the
And
Torah
that,
has a very simple rule: choose life.
yeah,
And
thank you.
and more than anything, I'm very proud that Israel has shown the power of choose life. It's not,
Mhm.
you know, kumbaya, let's be friends with everyone, but it's just like, Israel. I live in the Golan. Israel built the houses like bomb shelters. They built us bomb shelters every 50 yards.
Mhm.
Why? Because we choose life. We
Mhm.
have an army because we choose life. That sounds contradictory, but we've chosen to build up a country that has a thriving economy, that cares about the people, that has medicine, that has
Mhm.
social services.
Mhm.
And they've chosen to focus on killing and not
Yeah.
on the people and not on life. And we
Yeah.
see that living a life that is a godly life that's patterned on choosing life, it's a very powerful thing. So to bring the a third temple reality, a prophetic reality, a
Mhm.
biblical reality back into the world will benefit absolutely everyone. Everyone was saying, Donald Trump is going to move the embassy to Jerusalem and it'll start a regional war. No. What started that's actually the thing that did not start the regional war.
Exactly.
So it's just like, no, if we build the third temple, the United Nations, a dismal failure on all fronts. It should be a Sanhedrin in Jerusalem. That's what
Mm.
it should be.
I
So if we
agree.
had a Sanhedrin, if we had a third temple, a house of prayer for all nations, everyone would benefit. The world would be
Everyone.
a much better place. And I think
Amen.
that's what I see in your project. Anyway, Jim,
Hmm.
I have a rule to keep people always wanting a little more. If I get a lot of requests, I jump at any half excuse, any opportunity to interview you and schmooze with you a little bit more. I appreciate that you're taking the time out, and you must be wiped out from your trip. I grabbed you as soon as you got back to America. Thank you so much. Be blessed. And folks, I'm going to put in all the links. Also, my old stories about Jim. There's a lot of them. Um, I'm going to put in the link to his site. We are expecting amazing things from the Copper Scroll Project. And if you want to help Jim move forward with that, it's not just to put out pretty books or pretty pictures. It's to actually do something. So,
Amen.
so Jim, thank you so much. Be blessed. Give my best to your family.
I will. It's always my pleasure, Adam. You know that. And to your family as well.
Amen. Thank you so much.
We're not even seeing the bottom. Man, look at that, look at the door over here. See that? Why would they make tiny little doors like that? If they were getting robbed, you try to lift a 75-pound ingot through those doors, that'd be tough. And if you're in a hurry to get away with it, you'd have a very difficult time. The same over here. Yeah, it'd be very tough. And this is smart thinking. Now, they used 5 men to bury all these treasures. Why would they use 5 guys? Why not one guy with a really good handwriting? What do you think that would be?
To divide up the knowledge of all of the different treasures.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Divide the knowledge.
Nobody knows where all of them are, except for
Exactly.
maybe one person.
Yeah, Baruch, I'm going to bet he knew where all of them
All of them were.
So you don't think these guys all had access to the Copper Scroll?
No, they all had access to it, but they broke it into 5 teams. Haggai had his team, Zechariah had his team, and so on. They had split up, and I'm telling you, and I'll show you, when they started burying this stuff, they started, let me see if I can see it from here. Right over here, there's a mikvah. On the other side of this wall, long wall running over there, right on the other side, is a mikvah that is about, well, not about, it is 40 cubits long. Now let's start with that one. What they were doing is they were hiding this stuff to protect it from the Babylonians taking control of it. I am going, and I'm going to give you more stuff as we go. It says, at the steps, let me show it to you so you'll know what I'm talking about. It says, at the steps extending east, here is the actual facsimile of the Copper Scroll.
Right.
Here is the modern fonts. Here is the interpretation, or not the interpretation. What I did is I used Strong's Concordance.
Right. Yeah, you told me.
Yeah, use Strong's Concordance.
Amazing.
I would find the word in Hebrew, and then I'd plug it in, and I plugged in each one of the Strong's Concordance numbers. That way, if anybody questioned me,
Right.
because I'm not a Hebrew scholar by any stretch of the imagination, I could say, okay, go to this Strong's Concordance and look that number up, and you'll find this, and that. And you'll find out exactly why I use that number.
Right.
And that, so if you look at this,
You know what I find amazing?
what?
I can read that and understand it.
You can?
Yeah, sure.
Of course he can.
Sure, it's Hebrew.
Yeah.
What is this? It's Hami'ilot. Yeah, Hama'alot. Chavoa. Talia lemizracha. Well, that's actually, that letter
East.
doesn't, right. Amot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not exactly like modern Hebrew, and also I'm sure they were inscribed in metal, which is not,
Which made it very difficult.
it's not a laser printer.
And, and you know what? As you read this stuff,
But it's Hebrew. It's like clearly Hebrew.
Yeah.
It's not like Proto-Hebrew or something like that.
as you read this, you can see where they made mistakes. And they had to take out the eraser, which was a tiny little hammer, and smash it back down flat, and then
Pop it up again.
pop it up again. Here's the strange thing about this. The entire Copper Scroll, which is 3 sections about this long, about a foot wide, there's 3 of them, and 12 columns of Hebrew. They had to write from left to right. Now, does that make sense?
Because they had to flip it over and tap it on the back.
What they did, they wanted the letters and the words to protrude from the document, so they had to write it backwards.
Right, because Hebrew's written from right to left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had to
But
write
they
it
probably are
backwards.
making their mistakes because they're not used to writing
Exactly.
backwards.
But if you scribes, what they actually do
Except for all
is
of our children.
scribes don't write like we do. Scribes are copying letter by letter.
Yeah.
So they weren't taking dictation. They were copying what someone else had already written. So
But
I mean,
in this case,
that's the way modern
they
scribes
were
also.
writing-
The scribes
they
today
were
work.
writing from their heads. They're going, okay, and we'll go over there in just a second. They would find the location, and then they would look at it and then write down what it looked like. Normally, what they did was this: they would identify the location. They would tell how deep to dig, and they would say whatever final details they had to give them, and they would tell them how many talents of gold, silver, or gems were at that location. Really interesting. They had a constant pattern over and over again, and I used that constant pattern to be able to look at it and say, this one is, and when I reached the talents, then that's where it ended at, most generally.
The description of where it was
Yeah,
buried.
so all the descriptions met usually the exact same pattern. So that's how I found out there were 57 locations.
Wow.
And we're going to go look at number 1 here in just a minute. And as you walk, know this: you're going to be walking over lots and lots. No, I don't think there's any in the treasury. They took it all out, and they buried it. But they talk about this treasury. They describe it in detail. And I'll show you guys.
Jim, can I ask a question that I've always wanted to ask you? Okay.
I'm married. Yes.
That's actually not it. Along comes Jim Barfield, retired arson investigator from Oklahoma, former Army helicopter pilot.
Right.
You got certain gifts and talents, but you're not,
A scholar?
yeah.
I'm not. No.
I mean, and the Copper Scroll is on Mount Jordan. There are plenty of, you can read about it online. You can read the translation online. Why did Jim Barfield, why was he the first one after all these scholars have been looking at, why were you the one who figured it out? Convince me.
I'm going to tell you why.
And I'll tell you why I have a vested interest.
Okay.
There are a lot of people who have never been to Israel, and they'll come and they'll say, oh, but the temple was actually in the city of David down the hill. They have all these theories that they come up with, which are totally disconnected from the reality on the ground. Jim Barfield, you hadn't been to Israel,
No.
and you think you figured it out.
Yep.
Convince me.
I did.
Why? How did you figure it out when other scholars did not?
Here's what I believe. Why I
Okay.
think I did it. I came at it from a very fresh perspective. Everything that I thought was, I had no preconceived notions. Like I can remember reading over and over again, well, these items are scattered all over Israel. No. You're talking tons and tons of gold, silver, gems, and vessels.
And they didn't have a Hummer or a Land Rover next to them.
They had a donkey and a guy with a strong back, and a cart, maybe a few carts. But they didn't haul this stuff all over the country.
Right.
They didn't bury it. What they did is, well, what I did was I thought, okay, let's use a little logic here. And whenever I started breaking it down to a meaning, I used the Strong's Concordance. I let it do all the thinking, and all I had to do was find the word, plug it in, document it, and move to the next word. And then I waited until I had a complete sentence, then I would read it. The first thing it says, I'm going to read it to you, and then we're going to go look at it. Now we're going to be doing a little walking today. I hope you guys don't mind. It says, at the steps extending east, 40 cubits long, are silver temple service vessels weighing 17 talents. So now we got to find, and I'm going to let you look at a map because that's what I did, and then we're going to go check it. I created a map from an exact image from above, and I traced it exactly as it was. And I looked at this map. I'll let you look at it one at a time. And I said, where is a set of steps 40 cubits long? And obviously, it was there. You see that? 40 cubits long. And I thought, okay, well, that's a coincidence. I mean, this is my very first go at it. And I found this within 5 minutes. And I thought, it's impossible for anybody to figure something that has been around since 1952 and nobody figured it out. It can't be that easy. So let's go look at it and I'll show you.
If I can make 2 points, Jim. First of all, I mean, look around. You know, if you're looking for a good hiding place that's pretty out of the way, this is definitely a good candidate. You're going to hide stuff here. It's not like someone's going to stumble over it, you know,
this was
on their way to
truly
the store.
Wilderness at that time, too.
Right. And
no highways, no.
right. And one more point, if I may. There's a modern Israeli expression that's very common in the army. It's chokhmalog. Chokhmah means wisdom, smartness.
Right.
Log means like psychology, like a study of. A chokhmalog is a person who's so smart that he's stupid. Okay, which you run across in the army a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, a guy who knows better than the sergeant how to load the cannon, and you want to run away when he puts the shell in backwards. Okay, I have a feeling that there are a lot of chokhmalogim in the field of archaeology, and they didn't think that, gee, maybe it's buried real nearby.
They made it out to be, and I know one gentleman in particular, which I won't name, he thought it was all mystical. It was all Kabbalah. Well, come on, guys. You got to be kidding me. I mean, they don't even understand it, and they're expecting to figure it out using Kabbalistic matter. No. So let's go look at the basic stuff.
What about
Let's
your
keep it
famous
simple.
quote, though, that you did something that what most men never do? You followed the instructions.
We won't hold it against you.
She came up with that quote.
We won't kick you out of the club.
Maybe Lori, that was her contribution.
That was her
I thought that was
contribution.
a pretty funny quote. This is location 1.
Location. What I would do is this. I'd go online and I'd find this stuff, but this map was the best thing for me because it was to scale everything that I needed, and so I just retraced everything and made. If you look at it, any of the walls are black and they're solid. If they're below at ground level, they're brown. See that? Which made it easier to identify. Then these gray patches are like concrete or paving. So I would know, okay, they probably didn't bury it here. They probably didn't bury it in this area, this brown spot, and I'll show you this later. So what I did is I did the measurements on this, and I went from the edge of this, and I went all the way to the end of it, and it's 40 cubits long. 40 cubits comes up several times on the copper scroll. There's numbers that come up all the time on the copper scroll, like the number 390. Where do they get that number from?
Oh.
Where does 390 come from? Yes, sir.
Israel, when there were the 10 tribes, when they were scattered to the north, and that was when he laid on his side for 390 days.
Exactly. Exactly. 390, 40, where does that come from? Same deal. He laid on his side for 390 days and 40 days.
Who laid on his side?
Ezekiel.
The prophet.
Oh,
Remember, for the house
Oh my
of Judah,
gosh.
and for the house of, and for the house of Israel. I mean, this is like,
I'm a simple yid. I don't know much.
So there's numbers.
hang out with the Goanim, we'll help you.
That's why I'm here.
There are specific numbers that are used repeatedly, not only in this, but in time. I do biblical chronology as well, and there's timings from certain points in history over and over again, 390, 40, 483, those numbers are used repeatedly. And why? I think they're trying to keep it in context with biblical prophecy. So
You were actually referring to the Bible to help you decode what these people did.
yeah,
Did you do that just because you're a Bible kind of guy, or did you do that because like when you were an arson inspector, you're like the arson investigator, like, the suspect read the Bible a lot. So he was probably referring to this verse.
And obviously they did.
Obviously they did.
So now I'm looking at it, and I had to decide, okay, when you look at it, you got to think, how much is 40, how many talents was it? I had to find a place that was big enough to hold all the talents.
17.
40 cubits, 40 cubits, 40 talents of silver service vessel. Now, if you take an ingot weighing 40 talents, it's not much, 17. Where have you heard that number? I made a mistake. Thank you, Scott. 17 silver talents. Where have you heard that number before? It is a big number, especially in a lot of the things you saw happening with the Trump administration. Why they use 17? Can't tell you, but they did it a lot. Chris, do you know why they use 17 so much? I looked at that same, see this? I looked at this same mikvah here, and I thought, okay, he couldn't bury it on this end because it's too rugged back there, and there's too much stuff in the way. But he said at the steps heading east, so I thought he's talking about at the step where they begin. And I put my red dot here. You can't. This is on top of it. I could see it plain. None of these stairways and steps were here at the time we come over. So I'm looking at this thing, and here's an actual picture of it. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of room there to bury 17 talents of silver service vessels. And when they talk about silver service vessels, they're not talking about Dogon or any weird, they're talking about the temple service.
But they're talking about the vessels, not just plain silver.
Yeah, exactly. And silver.
Temple vessels.
An ingot is not that big.
Temple vessels.
Yeah, temple vessels.
Meaning if we dig them up, we got the original vessels that were from the second temple.
Exactly. And what did you say?
First temple?
Did you say second temple?
I said second temple.
No, first temple.
We're,
First temple.
oh my.
You were talking
We're
about
talking about
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah.
He had
Right.
first temple stuff to bury. He didn't have second temple,
It was
a couple hundred
pre-second
years
temple.
away.
Yep. He's
You're
gone.
talking
He's in
about
exile.
not only that, it talks about the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Guys, can you imagine if we actually find this stuff? It's going to do what? Adam, what do you think it's going to do?
Well, the problem is Jews can be very reluctant.
Yeah, well,
And you got to kind of force them to do the right thing. And force
Let's do that.
force us. And
Let's
I
do
think
that.
if we're actually looking at the actual vessels, I think it kind of forces our hand.
it does.
It's kind of like, guys, up until now, you've been playing around saying, oh, we're waiting for this Messiah guy. And now it's like, I mean, we don't have, when it comes to mitzvahs, we don't have an option.
Yeah.
But we can be, we can't actually do it right now. But if we can actually do it, we don't have a choice.
So let's force them and let's go. Over here. What do you say?
Yeah, it's a great segue.
Here's what it says. All within the pile of the dry cistern is gold. In the dry cistern, the great ruined courtyard of the peristyle, the soft sea floor is hidden, polished gold. In front of the uppermost opening are 900 talents. So, here we go. Now let's go look over here.
Jim, can I ask
Distracted you long enough.
a quick question? The reason for my question is this, and I hate when people give the reasons for their questions. One of my very, very few criticisms of Christians is they read the Bible like an allegory, when it is also an allegory, but you have to understand it on the simple level first. You said, Eliyahu, why don't we go to Qumran and I'll show you where all the gold is? And I'm thinking, okay, I got me a shovel, I got me a bucket and a backpack. Why are we not digging at this very moment?
Because the Israeli government won't let me. They won't let me because a couple of things. A couple of the reasons are very good reasons, but those reasons are crumbling right now. They wanted to protect these items from any foreign governments. One, Jordan, Palestinians, and they're not a government. They're just a bunch of people over there on the west side of the
disputed territory.
disputed. That was the reason they gave me. That well, we can't do that, and one of the I'm not going to say his name. He was in charge of the ADCA, which is the Archaeological Department of the Civil Administration. I mean, he's the head guy. I sat in my Al Adumim and went through a large portion of my research. Nice guy. He was sitting there at first, like, oh my gosh, this half-breed Mexican from Oklahoma, and he's going to tell me how to find the most valuable treasures in the world. He was sitting there and he was watching, and Chris was there. He'd verify this. I did the first one. He went like, "I'll be darned." I did this one that we're about to do. He went, and he started to look at it way more. And then the next one I'll show you. The next two I'll show you. It really got his attention. However, every major person that I showed this to, rabbis, government officials, they all did the same thing. They were all kind of lackadaisical, really not interested until I get to this one, which is number 2, and this one, which is number 4. Number 3 is out here, and I'll explain that in a minute.
I just want to emphasize, and it sounds a little, too much, but I think there's actually a need for this. When you're talking about Jeremiah, you're not talking about a bullfrog. You're not talking about some guy named Jeremiah. You're talking about a prophet, the Jeremiah, who, and these are the places he was, and he was involved in hiding the gold and silver. And we're not talking about allegorical gold and silver, wonderful thing. We're talking about
The real deal.
the hard stuff. And so when Christians come to Israel, they have to realize we're out of allegory. Allegory you can go back to, but first look at the reality that's in front of you. Yeah. And we're looking at a real place that was called Qumran, that there were real temple priests, and the temple at the time was in operation right up the hill. It was a big operation, constantly running, and they needed a lot of gold and silver, and they needed a lot of material stuff. And some of it might be hidden right down here, within meters of where we're standing.
Not even that far.
And it's right. And it's just politics that is preventing us from doing it, which I think behind the politics is a very serious spiritual illness.
Well, I tell you what, let's do. Let's see these, and then we'll take questions, and that way everybody can participate.
Sorry.
We'll be all here all day.
This is me being me.
You said it was like the gold. It's shining off of the gold, right?
Off of what room?
Yeah.
Tabernacle. Interior of the tabernacle. And the interior of that's polished gold. It describes this place, and we're going to see it later in detail. This place was used 2 times. Once by the guy who buried location number 3. The other one is the guy that buried location number 57. So it's the third one and the very last location on the Pepper Scroll. 2 really important ones. Here's a really important part about this. From location number 1, draw a straight line to number 2, draw a straight line to this location. They're in a perfectly straight line all the way down through there. Why did they do that? So he knew I'm not a real smart guy, so he said, just follow the steps, buddy, you'll find it.
It's linear.
This is it. See that concrete? Scott, would you show them what you found?
Famous pounding.
Yeah. Get comfy.
Oh yeah. No way to do it. Start here from back there.
Good, thank you.
Got it?
Yeah.
So far, so good.
Just the light.
So what are you telling me we found?
I
I mean, it sounds hollow.
It's got dirt all
Can't see.
over it.
For people who can't hear, that sounds very, very hollow.
Right.
And this is
Oh, I'm sorry.
It is very, very hollow.
Extremely hollow.
We got a picture of Scott and Sharon. Sharon was the director. She directed him to hit on that hard. And Scott did. He hit it and it was just echoed. Doop, 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 doop. So why could that possibly be? If we dig straight down, and this is what we're going to do. Just a second, Chris. This is what we're going to do. We're going to dig, if they still let us do this. I want to start right over there at the very edge and dig and pull dirt and start building a path down here. And get ready for the point whenever we actually open this thing up. That is.
What did you get here? What was the same scan? Or
No, we scanned. We didn't scan here because I didn't think
Okay.
there'd be anything. However, we got up there and we scanned enormous. There were 9, 10 stacks of non-ferrous metals. You could see there were huge stacks, bigger than the 900 talents of gold back there.
So what do you think is here, Jim?
Oh, I know what's there.
No, here.
At this location?
Yeah.
The ephod?
The ephod?
Yeah.
The ephod is the breastplate,
Yes. Yes.
which was basically right the precious stones
Yeah.
that
stones.
lit up to reveal God's
They were
answer
gone.
to your questions.
You bet.
It was like the first Google. It was the divine Google.
But it says on this, here, I'll read it one more
Just
time.
to give you an idea, I wrote a story about a family descended from a crusader who came to Israel from France, and he was allegedly gifted one of the stones, one of the less precious stones from the ephod. You can, if you Google sardonyx, you'll find it on my website. And they were asking $30 million for it. And it had 12 stones and then 2 on each shoulder.
Uh-huh.
So you do the math.
It could be, it can be very important. But guys, right here, if in fact it is here, we pull this all the way back. Look at where Laurie's at, down below her just a bit. If that's the base floor coming over here, that thing is at least 20 feet high. The opening to this thing, and in the last location, it calls the opening Haggadah. It's the big opening.
So you're saying this has all been filled in?
Yeah.
To close the
Matter of fact, look over there. You see that mound? There's nothing about that that looks natural,
You're right.
because that is a wadi over there, and if the water was rushing down through here, they did not want that to wash away and get up here and cause this to come open accidentally. That's my guess, but I think it's a good guess. So we don't get in trouble, let's head on back down there again. All within the built pile of the dry cistern is gold. In the dry cistern of the great ruined courtyard of the peristyle and the soft sea floor is hidden polished gold. In front of the uppermost opening is 900 talents. Now, wait a minute. He keeps saying dry. Why does he say that? You see this cistern that's coming out of the mountains over there? Mm-hmm. It
No,
runs all the
where's
way
it?
down here.
Where's the
See this
system coming out
canal,
of there?
this water flow
just follow
system?
the canal
Okay.
as it goes up there.
Okay.
They haven't got it completed, it looks like, but it goes all the way up there to the mountain.
Yeah.
And they actually had to. There's a large hole up there in the. You can't see it from here, but the way I understood it, they had a block of stones that they would lift up and let the water come rushing down through there. And that was their big storage place. Over here where Scott's standing at, that's the spot. Here we have the dry cistern that comes all the way through here and runs all the way up through there. Now, I want to mention this right now because I think it's important, is Qumran, I don't know if you guys saw it or not, Qumran is a mirror image of Jerusalem. Did you know that? No. Oh yeah. If you were to take a helicopter, hover up above this area, and this is the north end right now. But if you look at the maps, you have to rotate the map 180 degrees, and then they match up like this. When I found out, oh my gosh, why have they not seen this before?
Because they weren't a helicopter pilot flying in the middle of the night
Well, there you go.
trying to pick up wounded and not knowing where he was.
I didn't know. But 900 talents of gold, how much is that? 900, we're not going to do the math on that. I'm just going to tell you. 900 times 75 times 14 ounces, which is troy ounces, what they measure precious metals by. And then you multiply those troy ounces times, I think it's about $2,300.
2,700.
Is it 2,700? It just went up. $2,700. I promise you, you do the math on this, you're going to come up with $2.5 billion.
B.
Billion dollars. That is a lot of gold. And it's all right here. To verify this, I took a metal detector that cost us about, I think, what was it, Chris, $15,000?
No, I think it was 50.
The metal detector?
I think so.
No.
Was it 15?
Yeah, it's 15.
Mac bought it.
Yeah.
God bless him.
$15,000. And we took it, and we had a wonderful Knesset member at the time. He was the deputy speaker of the Knesset. Moshe Feiglin came out here with us.
You know, Moshe.
And we walked it out. We went across back and forth. There's a specific pattern you have to make that just goes back and forth across this until we got right over here in the corner, and then we walked right along this wall right here. We didn't even walk over this pile of gold. We just walked past it within a few feet. It lit up like a Christmas tree. You guys understand Christmas tree concept.
It's the season.
We got a few of them.
It lit up, and there was a massive spike in the readings. And that's not the only place. There's.
How far does one of those go down in the ground?
I think you said 15 meters.
Yeah, it'll go 15 meters. It goes.
And it'll
deep.
tell you whether it's ferrous metal or non-ferrous metal.
Yeah.
Silver and gold is not ferrous. So
No, and it just lit up. Well, I'll tell you that story some other time because it was a good story. Where's Chris?
Still a
Raise your right
good, it's
hand.
still a good
Plenty of
story.
water. Promise.
I think
It
he's
was a
plenty of
great-
water.
Nothing but the truth.
I opened it up. We were at Engedi under the canvas over there. I was under that, and I opened it up, and of course I'm nervous as a cat because I'm thinking, this is either going to make me or break me, or make the team and break the team. We opened it up, and every one of the locations we checked all had lots of non-ferrous metals in them. Lots, not just little teeny amounts. This area right here, there's one large amount where Scott's at right now, a large amount. And I think those were all vessels. And then right in the middle of it here, from where you're standing, straight over to, see that, there's a little room over there on that east side. It stretched all the way from there to there, and it said it was, I think, 60 cubits long. And it was exactly that. I measured it, and it was exactly that. So all the measurements, all the descriptions, everything matches what I'm telling you. That's, at this point, this is my second location. I'm sitting there early as Hanukkah. I'm sitting there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And what do they give out during Hanukkah for treats for the kids?
chocolate.
Chocolate in the form of gold and
Gold
silver and
coins.
coins.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Because it's the Romans. They took our gold and silver.
Dirty dogs. Babylonians took it too.
Babylonians took it
About
too.
every group that came before.
And they say we're the greedy ones.
You greedy dogs. So it says at the great ruined courtyard of the peristyle. This is the biggest courtyard at Qumran. And why do they call it a peristyle? A peristyle, I had to look it up too. Peristyle, I thought, what the heck is that? And it's a Greek word, and if you see I highlighted it in yellow because they spelled it with Hebrew letters, but it's a Greek word. A peristyle is an open court with the top, no top on it, just high walls. That creates a peristyle. And I thought, this will make a fine peristyle. Well, he said in the soft sea floor, this whole area right here was saturated because that water system had been broken by the Babylonians. This had been busted all up. And that area over there was a big water supply. And of course, the Mikvah was a big water supply.
This group's trying to get through. Should we let them pass
No.
through?
No, they own this land.
Okay.
Jim, I have a quick
Yeah, let's
question.
go over here.
Who was here?
At the time,
Who was here? Yeah.
you want to know who it was?
Yeah, I want to know who was.
You really want to know? I'll tell you who it was. It was the prophets. And I don't care who believes it, doesn't believe it. This was the home of the prophets. They had that's why you find in all these scrolls here. That's why you're finding all this information, is because those guys, and where did the prophets come from? Let's say Nathan. What did he do? He went in there and he chewed David's butt because he was doing what? Kissy kissy on another man's wife.
Yep.
He said, David, Bubba, what are you doing? Paraphrase. David, you got all kinds of sheep. What are you doing stealing this man's one precious sheep? And David repented, but he kept her. And he killed her husband, but that was accidental from what I understand. The guy was messing up. And Nathan went into town and he told him. He came out of the wilderness. Well, where do you think he came from? How many guys have you heard about in scriptures that came out of the wilderness?
John the Baptist.
John the Baptist, all kinds of prophets came out of the wilderness. Not all of them, I believe all of them came from here. But I promise you, they all wound up here at some point. Okay?
If I can reinforce that, I'm being so annoying. I'm sorry. I mean, looking around, who would come here? You know, it's like anyone, person who wants to get away from the lights of the big city.
Yep.
But they built a small model of the temple here. So, and they had mikvahs for ritual immersion.
Right.
And they're in the middle of a desert where no one would really want to live. They just wanted to be alone with God. And they left behind the Dead Sea Scrolls. They left behind, even though they weren't in Jerusalem, they were very closely connected with the temple. And the temple was very closely connected to them.
Absolutely.
So this Qumran is not just like another archaeological site in Israel.
Not
It
even
clearly, I mean, there were a lot of sects that were cropping up in Israel at the time that weren't exactly mainstream Judaism and might have actually been taking it even further.
And I promise you, if I'm right, this location right here will be second only to the Temple Mount. People will be coming
Right.
here by the hordes.
Right.
And I talked to a guy the other day at Kibbutz Kali, and we were talking. He was one of the owners over there. I said, we're wanting to do an excavation over here. We'd like to talk to you about some ruins. He said, yeah, of course. And he said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm limited on what I can say. I said, but if we find what we think we're going to find, your property over here is going to go through the roof. Because Ken, Ken's a real estate developer. What would you build out here that would be of benefit to your pocketbook?
Oh, absolutely. I think you're going to see hotels and some sort of housing accommodations for people to come and tour and visit. And that piece of real estate that Jim's referencing, it'll totally change their lifestyle, right? People will come from all over. Yeah.
I think
it's going to be good for that kibbutz that's been faithful. Yeah, I think they're good. They're sitting on a blessing.
I think if I can give a plug, people come to Israel, Christians come to Israel, and they do the Christian tour, and they're missing the Bible. They're missing what's really here. They should come to Qumran. They should go to Shiloh. They should go to Har Bracha. They should go to, if they come to the Golan and they miss Katzrin, they miss, there's so much here. And like I said, it's not an analogy. It's not.
Yeah.
It's real. It's
life,
stones
like
and
water.
If you connect with that, you're connecting with New Testament, Old Testament, Future Testament. You're connecting with a lot of
I
stuff.
like the idea that he's connecting to the prophets because it's
Right.
because the desert. What's the word? The connection between the desert and the word, the word of God. Isn't there the portion there that we?
Did you learn that from Rashi? Did you?
But there is a word. There's
Oh my gosh! Yeah, the
What's
word for desert is midbar, which is if you're reading it without the vowels, it's exactly the same as the word midaber, meaning speaking.
right.
So
Speaks to you in the
Where is the
desert.
prophet going to hear God? Where did
the
Yeshua
still
come?
silent voice.
Jesus came here to 40 days in the wilderness before he began his ministry. So it was I mean, there's a connection here, and
Absolutely.
Wait till I tell you some more about that connection.
You know actually why
It will blow your socks
the
off.
Gemara asked the question, why was the Torah given in the desert? And they say because the desert is hefker, that no one owns it, and no one claims ownership of it. So when you go out to the desert, you become ownerless, and you're looking for your owner. You're looking for your boss. And the only way you can do that is you say, I don't belong to this, I don't belong to that, I belong to him. And that's where he's going to talk to you.
not only too because the messianic vision that I've learned in the last 20 years, I didn't get it from the church. I got it from the messianic vision is the regathering of the people of Israel. The lost sheep of the house of Israel to come back to the land of Israel. But it's not just about the people. It's about my Father's house. It's about
Amen.
it's about the house of prayer for all nations.
Amen.
These are the things that we so clearly have connected in Christianity to Judaism, but we don't acknowledge it. We don't preach it. We don't teach it. We don't.
Sure.
But it's obviously there in our Bibles, and the people that were followers of Jesus were people that wanted to see restoration.
Yeah.
So this would be a important place for that to happen.
And I'm going to show you more about that too, because that is a key element to this whole story. It's more than just a place that's got a lot of gold and silver. It's got some massive history.
Amen.
And if I'm right about this next location, which is right up there, let me show you something. Let's go to location number 3. It says, in the heap of color are the wine vessels of the gleaming chamber, the ephod, and the entire and complete tithe of the pouring vessels from the treasury. Well, which treasure are they talking about? Right there. They didn't have to haul it all the way from Jerusalem. All they had to do is gather it up out of here and take it out to this location. And it's a little warm today, and that's a long walk out there, but you really need to get an opportunity to
Let's
see
see it. I
that.
want to go.
I'm sorry?
Let's see it. I want to go.
You want to walk out
You
there?
guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Well, at the time, the two guys that were in charge of Judea, Samaria / Gaza Strip, Yuval Peleg and Yitzhak Magen, they actually wrote a book, and it came out about 1 month before I made the discovery, which was really handy for me because they gave details that I didn't have, and it was just awesome. So they had finished up on it, and I'm gonna kind of tell you how this all came about. I had been visited with Vendel Jones, and he allowed us to come to. So we spent 2 weekends with him, not in order, but we spent 2 weeks with him, and we had a great time. Great time with the guy. He was teaching me about the copper scrolls. He taught me some very important things. One was that the copper scroll was written by 5 men. All of them were prophets. 2 of them you probably wouldn't know, but you would know the other ones. Zechariah and Haggai and Baruch. How about Hashem? Yeah, Baruch was one of them. Baruch was actually the one that was in charge of this operation. What had happened was the Babylonians had come across the Dead Sea, and they decided they would attack Qumran. And most of your scholars are going to tell you that it was Roman period. No, not even close. Every document that talks about the Copper Scroll says it was at the time of Jeremiah. Jeremiah was in jail in Jerusalem, and they were attacked. When they got attacked, they killed, out of 230 priests, they killed 130 of them. And they fought like heck to keep this place. And had the Babylonians known that it had as much treasure as it did, they probably would have came back and fought even way more. But thank goodness they didn't, and they had to leave the treasures here. There's a place in the Dead Sea Scroll, or the Copper Scroll, that talks about the the house of a cause. You ever heard that name before?
No.
Look it up in scripture. It talks about the house of a cause. They were the treasurers. And I remember reading about it years ago, and they were talking about the house of a cause, and they were trying to decide where. They knew it was in this area, but they couldn't figure out where it was at. Well, guess what? We found it. And it wasn't that hard. Right here.